pornography is everywhere, but at the same time, we cannot address it because it's taboo as well. It's where children go to seek information on sexuality when they do not have access to it in school properly. And it is creating a big issue of inequality, propagation, normalization, sexualization of violence against women and girls, but also racist violence, lesbophobic and homophobic violence, and pedocriminality. Some of the top research in pornographic websites are racist slurs, incest, rough sex, rape, schoolgirl, any words that suggest pedocriminality or violence.
And then at the end, porn. Yes, I mean, many things were mentioned. Yes, there are many things online that are not acceptable, that are strengthening what we are fighting against. But we also need to recognize that there are different kinds of porns online, that there is a very small part maybe, but there is ethical porn and there is queer porn.
When we speak about things, we should go from a principle of reality. When it comes to pornography, 90% of the content is violent. So it does rely on exploitation and sexual violence of women and girls who are most vulnerable in the world, those who are migrant and asylum seekers, those who are in war zones. For instance, after the war on Ukraine was declared, the top research trending on pornographic platforms was Ukrainian girls. In India, when a 10-year-old girl was found dead after being gang raped and cut in little pieces and put in the trash, her name was trending on the pornographic websites. That's the reality of pornography. In France, very recently, a few weeks ago, the Senate has issued a report on pornography explaining the hell that it actually is for women in pornography and for the integrity of society as, like we mentioned before, children and adults are overwhelmingly exposed to this violent content. They say that 1 out of 3 children under 15 years old have access to pornography and that 90% of this content is violent. More and more you're going to be exposed to this violent image, you're going to seek more and you're going to reproduce it in your everyday life because it's going to normalize for you the objectification of women and mixing the idea that violence is pleasure once again, and torture, humiliation is pleasure, because it's not just sexual violence, it's pure humiliation. It's women being peed on, being spat at, being raped until they bleed, until they lose their organs through their anus and their vagina, through their vomit. So this is the overwhelmingly reality of pornography, and that's what we should be talking about, in my opinion, when we speak about pornography. So we also need to acknowledge the way young people are using internet and exploit these new spaces in order to bring positive messaging. Everything that we've been talking about, these feminist guidelines that we have for sexual education, that's the new narrative that needs to be brought in these spaces, because right now what we can see is a lot of fetishization of girls and women, especially when they're from different ethnic backgrounds and ethnic minorities. It's also promotion of toxic and violent behaviors, especially for boys. CEDAW committee in their General Recommendation 35 explains that sexual education should promote non-violent models of masculinities. But the approach must be different, and for boys it's about challenging, tackling these toxic and violent behaviors. For girls and women, it's closing a gap. And it's indeed, as it was mentioned, speaking about female body and anatomy, because we do not know about our body, we're not taught this. Speaking about female pleasure, speaking about desire versus consent. Consent, obviously, it's at the basis, it's very important, but speaking about desire is also important, because consent can be coerced, it can be bought, it can be also something that you do because of social expectation or because you want to please a boyfriend, a husband. So consent alone is not enough, and we also need to speak about desire.